Well, hello and welcome again to the Disability Law Show. John Scholes, your host, alongside Tamar Agopian, courtesy Samfiru, Tumarkin, LLP, the most positively reviewed law firm in the country. We talk about disability law on this show over the next 30 minutes. Lots of things to learn. If you want to reach out anytime to Tamar after the show for a lengthier conversation, no problem. 1-855-821-5900 is the phone number. help@disabilityrights.ca is the email and the website. There's always a companion website to go with it, just disabilityrights.ca as well. On the show today, Tamar, lots going on, including 3 important ways your doctor can help your LTD claim. But first, we get to a case of the day, or a week that was, something that you've been working on, pal. How are you?
Good, thanks. Good. Yes, another busy week, of course, John. And, you know, I came across a woman who called us back after speaking to us last year, and I wanted to share this with our viewers. It was a really interesting situation she was in that we talk about sometimes on our shows. She was contacted by the insurance company. She'd been on claim and received what we call a buyout, or basically a buy-off of her disability claim. And they were trying to pay her for a period of time in exchange for her releasing her rights under the disability policy and no longer being covered on the policy beyond a certain period. And so she came to us, we had our consultation. I took her through the typical analysis that I would take anyone through in a situation like this, which includes what's the nature of your disability, how old are you, how long does your disability benefits typically pay for, what value is there to your monthly benefit, and really just calculating how much of this claim was actually being paid by the insurance company in relation to how long her own doctors were expecting her disability to persist. And the advice that we gave her at the end of the day was, look, this seems rather hasty. She was still within the own occupation period of her policy, which meant that the insurance company was approving and paying her disability benefits on the basis that she was totally disabled from returning back to her own occupation. And they hadn't even yet, were not even in striking distance of the change of definition. And in fact, the buyout that they had offered wasn't even making her whole until the change of definition. And so the analysis we went through with her was, look, it's a rather risky proposition that you're, perhaps not going to be well enough at the outside of this 2-year period in order to get back to some other occupation, and also not knowing whether or not you're going to be well enough to work at all. And so it was premature, as it often is with the insurers, you know, providing this kind of a buyout situation. And so she was thankful for the consultation. I, instructed her in terms of what my advice would be, and she actually ended up taking our advice. So she turned down the insurer's buyout option. Fast forward to a year later. And they paid her all that time, they adjudicated her claim, and of course now they're looking for ways to close out the claim. And so they are now at the doorsteps of this change of definition analysis, and she's come to us and said, okay, Tamar, now what? And I've given her the same advice I gave her a year ago, which is, we're here. We're here to support you. This is what we think the insurance company is going to do in terms of that analysis. Here's where your doctors need to step in to provide you that support about what's happening right now, both in terms of your current picture, the diagnosis, but also, John, what's the prognosis? Right. Where is this going to go? And on the basis of that, the insurance company is going to have to make their any occupation analysis and make a decision about her claim. And if they make the choice that they're going to cut her off, if they give her that analysis that they think there's some other occupation that she can do, this is where we would step in typically. This is most often where we see people coming to us for help, because the insurance company didn't get the buyout a year ago, John, so you know they're anxious in terms of bringing that claim to a close. And the expectation probably is that they're looking to close out her claim once more. But if her doctors are still supporting that she's not able to work, which is exactly what's happened, by the way, then the insurance company has an obligation to continue those benefits. And if they don't, you do have options, and you can contact us and we'll talk you through some further options, which is exactly what we're doing in her situation.
So when it comes to that buyout with the insurance company, is this something they do regularly with most of their clients? And the reason behind it is they just want to wrap it up, save a few coins, and just get them off claim?
It's exactly right. Yeah. It's a tactic. It's a tactic. Now, I wouldn't say that this happens across the board. I also wouldn't say that it's going to happen to you necessarily if you're on disability benefits. But be mindful of the fact that if you are broached by your insurance company with some kind of a buyout, you do want to get some legal advice around what that means. Because one of the things that they don't explain to you is that in order for you to accept this amount of money, and it's a pool of money, and it looks very attractive because it's all up front, and the idea, of course, being that you don't have to deal with the insurance company anymore. But there's a catch, and the main thing is that you will be signing a release, giving up your rights to the whole balance of the disability policy. In other words, let's say in a scenario where you were to accept this buyout, execute this release, and then at the end of the day, you were to get sick again, perhaps go back to work, get sick again, you will not be able to access this policy once more. So John, this is why it's so important for people to have that conversation with a disability lawyer, someone who understands the fine print and what it is that you're giving up if you do accept this type of a buyout.
Yeah, I can see it being attractive versus if you were to explain to somebody if you're possibly on claim until age of 65 and they're offering you $60,000, whereas your entire claim may be $300,000. That 50, 60 grand looks pretty good coming in one check.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's tempting.
It is tempting, but the person I'm speaking of, and I want to keep her privacy, but generally speaking, she's in her 40s. So imagine a scenario where she could be deemed totally disabled until retirement. That's almost 20 years more because most of these policies pay until you're 65. So you've really got to be careful. It does look attractive at first, but if you don't get good advice, then my fear, frankly, for most people, which is exactly what the insurance company wants to do, is close this out, you're done, you sign away your rights, and they're able to close your file forever.
Want to talk a little bit about a website you can go to called pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. Now it says employment, right? That's the other show we do, but there's a reason why we talk about it here, Tamar. There's a nice, robust section on disability law rolled into that website. Tell me a little bit about how you use it.
Absolutely. And so Pocket Employment Lawyer, this is, Lior's, brainchild. It's an amazing tool that people can access and use. It's a plug-and-play type situation where you go in, you put in a few pieces of information, and it can estimate for you what you might be entitled to by way of severance if you were to be terminated. But along with that tool is also a space where you can provide, get information and provide information in terms of your disability claim as well. So we've been able to have these tools available, great websites, great resources, so that if individuals are feeling a little sheepish about calling us and contacting us, speaking to us, they can first do those preliminary steps completely anonymous and just plug and play and get a little bit of information so that they know what the jumping off point is to getting some further advice, or perhaps just waiting and seeing what's going to happen either with their employment situation or their disability claim.
Again, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca, free and anonymous. That's the best part. There's also contact information at the top right if you want to reach out to Tamar or a member of her staff as well. Want to get to an email here as we roll along. help@disabilityrights.ca is how you can contribute to the show anytime. Sarah is the first one up. Tamar says, for the past 2 years, my husband has been unable to work due to neurological issues. We recently saw a specialist who said that long-term alcohol use could be the cause. Today, we received notice from the insurance company that his long-term disability payments will end due to his addiction. What do we do?
Really great question, Sarah, and thank you for reaching out to us. And so let me unpack a little bit about what I think the insurance company might be saying in a situation like this. There are provisions in most disability policies that say if your disability arises from an addiction, a substance use or abuse type situation, then in a situation like that, the insurance company can exclude or deny your disability claim on that basis. It's an exclusion in the policy. In other words, it'll say, we will pay you X, this is the basis as to why we will pay, but if your disability arises from these certain terms and conditions, we get to deny the disability claim. Now, insurers know what I know, which, well, the adjusters don't know, John, but certainly their lawyers know what I know, which is this can border on being a potential human rights issue. And so they like to dress up these kind of denials by saying you're not getting appropriate treatment. That because you're not getting appropriate treatment for your substance issues, this is a basis for us to deny the claim. It's not a correct analysis, though, because what Sarah describes for us is that there's a neurological issue. And that, in and of itself, if it's causing symptoms and issues, that is compensable. If it's creating first of all, if the doctor is supporting that there's symptoms there that are disabling, preventing the individual from working, That's the test for total disability. It should be approved and paid no matter what, regardless of that exclusion, especially if you're following appropriate treatment from that doctor.
It's interesting, too, because we've had emails and we've talked about on the show prior as well when it comes to alcoholism and other things that are, you know, their addictions. When people are getting treatment, sometimes they fall off the wagon, sometimes they do well. It's a natural course of treatment, but the insurance company says, oh, you're not following your treatment. But it's the doctor will tell them, no, this does happen with addiction and coming out of it, right? So you got to deal with that basket of eggs as well sometimes.
That's right, John. And substance use in and of itself is a mental health condition. Yep. It's recognized as an illness in and of itself. And so insurers, as much as perhaps they would like to not pay these types of claims, are obligated to pay these claims if it's part of, particularly when it's part of an overall health issue. So you've got potentially a neurological condition, you've got lots of people who may be self-medicating these kinds of issues, and at the end of the day, if they're doing all that they can to sustain their health and try and get to a point of recovery, the insurance company should be paying a disability claim like that. And if they're not, my hope is that people are going to give us a call, allow us to have our free consult with them, talk them through the options, really get into whether or not the insurance company is triggering the decline on an appropriate basis. But 9 times out of 10, they're not. Mm-hmm. And that's where we would step in to support someone with a legal claim. And we've been successful in doing that so many times, John. I can think of at least a couple in my cabinet right now of files where I'm supporting individuals that have an underlying substance issue and challenging the disability insurer for more benefits.
We have got lots more coming up, just getting warmed up. We'll get into how your doctor can strengthen your LTD claim. In the meantime, to reach out to Tamar and her team, 1-855-821-5900, help@disabilityrights.ca. We'll continue with more Disability Law Show. Hang on. People think you should go to the government to get severance pay. EmploymentLawyer.ca says that is a myth. Government can only help you get minimum severance, but not everything you're entitled to. Always check with the employment lawyer first at EmploymentLawyer.ca. If your long-term disability claim is denied, should you appeal?
Appeals often fail because insurance companies control the process. So long as you appeal, you're playing by their rules.
You should never appeal the denial of your disability benefits. Appeals are just a mirage of false hope.
Don't. That's their process. Take it out of their hands and fight for your rights with our help.
Go to disabilityrights.ca. Discover your rights, fight back, and get what you're owed. People think their employer can make changes to their job. EmploymentLawyer.ca says that is a myth. Your employer can't change your pay, hours, or duties. You may be entitled to full severance pay. Always check with the employment lawyer first at EmploymentLawyer.ca. Alrighty, welcome back, Disability Law Show. Lots more to go here. We always tackle a topic on each show to educate you even further. Today, it's going to be 3 important ways your doctor can help your LTD claim. Tomorrow, let's get right into this. Number 1, provide a detailed report and subsequent periodic updates about your disability and its impact on your ability to work. What do you say about that?
I say yes.
Okay, moving on.
Yes. So look, let's unpack this a little bit. The core really of disability benefits is if your doctor is supporting that you've got health issues that are preventing you from working. And having your doctor articulate that in a detailed report, not on a piece of napkin, the one-liner that you might send to your employer. I'm talking about detailing all of the symptoms, what the diagnosis is, really getting into how those symptoms line up with your occupational duties. It's critical. I cannot say this enough, how important these kinds of reports are to the disability claim. Whether you're challenging the disability claim in a legal setting with our help, or whether you're going through it with your adjudication and the claims adjuster asking you for periodic updates. The doctors, I find, sometimes can sort of say it's more of the same, status quo, this kind of thing. I would encourage individuals who may be listening to our show wondering, how do I improve this situation with my disability claim? How do I best get the articulation of what's happening to me day to day? You want to express that to your claims adjuster, and you want those symptoms and those comments and those details also echoed in the medical information that you're providing to the disability insurer as well. So get the doctor to talk about the details. even if it's issues like chronic pain, depression, you're still finding difficulties doing certain activities. Even if it's more of the same, having that articulation that these symptoms have persisted for 3 months, 4 months, a year, 2, what have you, very, very important to the disability insurer.
Interesting point you make, because just as there's all different kinds of patients, there's all different types of doctors. And, most doctors probably didn't get into medicine to fill out forms. They love doing that part. So if you have a doctor who maybe it's not even a factor of not enjoying it, maybe they're not too versed on how to do it, how do you, without giving them the correct verbiage on what to say, of course you would never do that, you're not going to tell a doctor what their job is. How do you advise or guide a doctor to get them through this if they haven't got a lot of experience, right?
Absolutely. So look, it can be daunting for doctors, and by no means am I, as a disability lawyer, going to suggest to any one of my clients as patients of their medical teams what should be happening. That is not my swim lane, so to speak. But I think that the forms in and of themselves, John, don't afford a good opportunity for doctors to actually articulate in their own words what's happening with a patient, right? There are some doctors who've been treating patients for years, and even getting the doctor to comment on the fact that I've seen a decline in this person over the last 2, 3, 4 years, that validates what it is that's happening and further lends support to the opinion that the doctor ultimately gave to have this individual stop working and proceed with a disability application.
Right. Well, we were talking about 3 important ways your doctor can help your LTD claim. Number 2 is this, Tamar: refer to any specialists who may be able to help you, such as psychologist or psychiatrist, chronic pain doctor, etc. Down that road, right?
Yeah, so the doctor really is, at least the family doctor in my mind, the driver of accessing other health supports that you might need. And that's their role, and I think it's an important one. But just to give our viewers a little bit of insight, sometimes the disability insurers actually prefer the specialist's opinion over the family doctor. And so having your family doctor direct you to other specialists can be another log on the fire, so to speak, on the disability claim, because then you're now getting the specialist to also look at where you're at from a health perspective, also weigh in on what treatment recommendations could be available to you, what more perhaps that can be done to get you on that path of recovery, and also validate that, look, the family doctor's been doing a bang-up job, but this is also the other additional supports that we can provide. The one specialist that comes most to mind, John, is a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Claims adjusters typically, when it's a mental health disability, want to see those types of mental health specialists weighing in a mental health disability claim. They generally will resist the family doctor's assessment on its own as sufficient basis for approving or continuing to approve an ongoing disability claim that's based on mental health. I could go on for a while on this one. I'm quite passionate about mental health disability, John, but just to sort of wrap up here is that I think that there's a lot of value in, at the very least, seeing a psychologist or a psychiatrist in addition to the family doctor if you're trying to continue to get your benefits paid by the disability insurer. Yeah,
it's interesting you mentioned mental health too, because even your family doctor GP can probably read a CT scan or look at a broken rib, but the mental health stuff, it's good to have the backing of people that are in that swim lane, as you say, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's just that extra support that someone really is suffering from these conditions. Mental health in and of itself is quite invisible as a disease. It cannot be seen in a scan. And having a specialist to actually comment on diagnoses, appropriate treatment, perhaps medication changes, then gives the disability insurer something to look at and really to follow along. Because I can tell you, the claims adjusters have no experience in this kind of work. They don't know what they're doing. They're just box checkers. And so if the psychiatrist or the psychologist is saying, look, it's going to be another 3 months or more or less, then the adjuster can then put that in their trusty little tools and continue paying that disability benefit for however long the specialist has recommended that this person still needs treatment and remain off work.
Well, I think it's also a good arrow to have in your quiver as a claimant, because you can almost guarantee that eventually down the road, if you're off long enough, the insurance company is going to send you to see their specialist, their psychologist, so you want to be armed with your own, right?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I think that at the end of the day, courts certainly will prefer your own treatment providers. So you might as well access those as best as you can and get that medical team lined up to support the disability claim. Because you're absolutely right. One of the tools the insurance companies have is to send you to their own assessors. And when they do that, that assessment is going to be somewhat biased. It's going to come back probably in favor of the insurance company because the insurance company paid for it. Exactly, John.
Yeah. Number 3, we're talking about ways your doctor can help your LTD claim. Is this confirmed that you are following all recommended treatments? We talked about this in the first segment. Keep on top of it.
That's exactly right. And I think that why it's tied so closely to what's happening with a disability claim is because it is written into most disability policies. Most disability policies, folks, will have an appropriate treatment clause. And I don't want to get too much into the legal speak here, but at the end of the day, what the insurer is looking for is that not only that you've got a health condition preventing you from working, but that you are trying to make some efforts to focus on your health and get to that point of recovery. And of course, the insurer is going to build that into their policy in terms of releasing that disability benefit month over month. So do heed that advice. Do have your doctor comment on what's happening, where you're at, and if there are treatment options that are recommended that are not going to harm your health, then please do try and at least make that attempt so that you can show the disability insurer, hey guys, I am trying to do everything that I can.
We have given you several ways to reach out to Tamar. I'll give you one more as we get into a break, and we're going to refer to it when we come back. MyDisabilityQuestions.com. That is free. It's anonymous. It's also the way you can search for a previously asked question similar to yours. Save you some time. If not, leave it there. Tamar, a member of your team, will get to it again. MyDisabilityQuestions.com. We are going there after a short break right here on the Disability Law Show. Hang in. People think contractors aren't owed severance. EmploymentLawyer.ca says that is a myth. Many contractors are actually employees and are entitled to full severance pay. Always check with the employment lawyer first at EmploymentLawyer.ca. How do you force insurance companies to pay long-term disability claims?
Insurance companies deny legitimate claims all the time. They're playing the odds. They know that most people are just going to walk away.
Your insurer may ignore you, they may even ignore your doctors, but they can't ignore us.
We know how insurance companies work. We know their weaknesses. We know how to use the legal process to force them to pay you what you're owed.
Go to disabilityrights.ca. Discover your rights, fight back, and get what you're owed. People think you are only owed 2 weeks' pay when you lose your job. EmploymentLawyer.ca says that is a myth. You may be owed much more than 2 weeks per year. Don't settle for less. Always check with the employment lawyer first at EmploymentLawyer.ca. All right, welcome back. This is the Disability Law Show. John Scholes here, along with Tamar Agopian, courtesy Samfiru, Tumarkin, LLP, the most positively reviewed law firm in the country. You want to reach out to Tamar, the partner, or a member of her team, you can do so. The number first, 1-855-821-5900, help at disabilityrights.ca. And I did just mention MyDisabilityQuestions.com. Yet another place for you to ask questions, free and anonymous. Tamar, let's get to Darnell. He took the time, says, I'm being asked to attend another independent medical assessment, and I'm not sure if it's a common practice. After the first one, my insurer tried to force me to get treated by their doctor instead of my own. I'm worried a refusal to attend this session will lead to my benefits being cut off. There you go. What can I do?
What can you do? And so, look, much as we talk about this throughout the show, in and out, a lot of this depends on what the disability policy says. And some disability policies say if they want to have you assessed, John, you've got to attend the assessment. Unfortunately, Darnell, this is the harsh reality, is that I'm surprised actually that they've already sent you to one assessment and that they're actually sending you to another one. But you got to think they're doing it because they're spending money on your file in order to try and bring that file to a close. And as I said in the prior segment, if they are spending those funds doing that type of assessment, you can bet that that assessment's going to come back in favor of the insurance company. And so look, there's a few important things you can do. Number one, of course, is to rally your own medical team. Yes, you do have to attend the assessment, but you want to make sure that at the very least your family doctor is aware that you are attending this assessment. You also want to get a lot of clarity around what is the nature of the assessment. Do you have to attend in person? Can you bring someone with you? How long is it expected to last? A whole host of things that you want to have some clarity around, because you want to then be able to make your own notes about what was asked, what you experienced. Typically, for example, if you do a physical assessment, it could be over 2 days. You could be, laid up in bed for several days afterwards. The insurance company's not going to check in with you as to what's happening afterwards. So you want to have your own accounting about what was asked, what was said, what you experienced, and then make sure you get a copy of that assessment report. Either have it sent to you or have it sent to your family doctor, but you want to see what was said. these insurance adjusters will direct very specific questions to be asked by the independent medical examiner, John. And those questions have to be answered, and inevitably one of them will say, can this person get back to work?
Yep.
And if the conclusion is, which most of them are, that this person can get back to work, but your doctors disagree with that kind of assessment, this is where you want that medical report that we talked about in our prior segment.
Yep.
You want your doctor to have the tools of not only seeing what the basis of the assessment was, but also give them the ability to actually challenge it effectively and prepare their own updated opinion about what's happening with your health, so that you can then potentially present that to the disability insurer as a means of preventing what eventually may be happening, which is the cutoff of the claim.
Is there a boundary, so to speak, as far as this assessment goes? What I mean by that is the insurance company says, okay, Tamar, you know what, we need you to send you to one of our people for an assessment. You're in Toronto, but our guy's in Cochrane, so grab a plane ticket or a train ride, off you go. Is there a boundary to how far they can push you as far as that's concerned?
Well, look, I think you want to keep it generally into the jurisdiction or locale that you are in.
Right.
So yes, if it's going to be very far away, then the insurance company should actually be facilitating transportation to getting you there. But be mindful of that as well. I can think of an instance, John, where I had a client who had to get on a plane to go from one city to another to attend the IME assessment. And so, you know, the advice there was, look, you've got to ensure and expect that the insurance company is not only observing what's happening during the assessment, but they may also be observing what's happening during those transfer periods of time as well.
Oh, wow.
So you want to just be aware as to what's involved so that you're prepared not only mentally but physically, and also, of course, most importantly, to respond if the IME report comes back saying that you can work or are able to do certain things that your own doctors are saying that you can't.
Was that city Vegas or New York by chance? No, I'm not going. Forget about it. Mallory, we got enough time, couple minutes to get Mallory's email in here quick. Says, I've been on disability for over a year due to severe depression. A new doctor has taken over my treatment and suggested that there is a possibility I'd be able to return to work in the future, but did not specify when. The insurer has decided that this is enough of a reason to me begin a return to work program, but I'm not ready.
I see this situation a lot, John, and that's fair, especially when you've got a mental health condition. You know, what you want to prevent is that pressure tactic that the insurance company is putting on you to try and get back to work sooner than you are ready to go. I mean, look, what you want to be able to do perhaps is coordinate at least between your own medical team and what the insurer has you believe about a return to work, and perhaps make that return to work more gradual. That is absolutely an option. You could also try and put some restrictions, limitations in place in your work setting so that when you are returning, you're not being bombarded by the full duties that you had before you went off work or disability in the first place. But again, the role of your own medical team is so critical for any of these scenarios, whether it's an independent medical examination or it's this kind of a return to work scenario. You want to make sure that you've got the endorsement from your own team that you're able to return, number one, and number two, that you're able to return in the time frame that the insurance company wants you to return. Because guess what, John? Once you return, they want nothing to do with you, right? They want to end that claim, close it out, and not have to pay you any further disability benefits.
Well, you mentioned, I think you were bordering on talking about accommodation there, which is,
Yes.
you know, an interesting time to mention that you do both employment law and disability law under Samfiru Tumarkin. There's so much crossover between the two as well,
ton.
right? Yeah.
And this is why it's so important to really seek out the right disability lawyer and firm, frankly, because so few of us actually do both sides of the aisle. And that interplay is so critical in exactly the situation that Mallory describes for us. You want to be able to get advice not only on how do I navigate my disability claim, but then what happens on the employment side if I'm getting any trouble or resistance from my employer about putting accommodations in place or perhaps doing a graduated return a little longer than what my employer wishes or the insurer wishes.
And with that, we are done. Thank you so much for your contribution to the show. As we close off, here's the number to reach Tamar and her team, 1-855-821-5900. The email address is help@disabilityrights.ca. And as mentioned, we went to mydisabilityquestions.com. That is absolutely free and anonymous for you to use anytime. So go ahead and do that, and we'll catch you next time on the Disability Law Show.